Welcome to Season 5 of Far Reach Voyages, where we share our love of sailing and adventure travel. In this episode, I'll sail the Far Reach west down the south coast of St John and St Thomas, and then I'll beat up the West Gregory Channel and pick up our mooring in Elephant Bay. It's technically Ruddier Bay, but the whole anchorage is generally referred to as Elephant Bay. This is a longer video than usual because a couple of viewers requested it, along with more explanation about what's taking place and what my decision process is when I'm sailing. There's minimal editing, but I'll provide more commentary than normal, where I think it might be helpful to less experienced sailors. I'll also cover the mooring pickup under sail in detail to explain what's taking place there. I'd appreciate feedback from the viewers in the comment section if this approach is interesting or distracting. I had just sailed off the mooring in Lambshire Bay on the south coast of St John. There's the Far Reach running downwind with the preventer in place on the boom, and the Cape Horn wind vanes doing the steering. I'm making preparations to raise the jib since I don't have a furler. For those viewers that haven't done a lot of sailing on a boat like this, a big part of it is just line management. It's easy to end up with a lot of lines on deck when you're making sail changes or rigging and unrigging a whisker or a spinnaker pole. Just hauling up the jib leaves you with about 50 feet of line on deck, and if you're also hauling up the main, that adds another 50 feet. You may have a lot going on, you can't coil it right away because you have to attend to other tasks. But at the first opportunity, you need to coil and secure all these loose lines. It's easy to end up with lines streaming over the side of the boat, and if you're using an engine, you're guaranteed sooner or later to get the line fouled in the prop. Almost every sailor has had that happen at least once. Before we start the engine, we make sure there are no lines in the water. Line management is one of the reasons I don't run lines from the mast back to the cockpit. It puts too many lines in the cockpit. There are already enough lines there. With 3-strand line, I make standard coil. But with double braid, I use a modified coil, reversing every other loop, which allows the line to run free without having to untwist itself. I spend a lot of time making sure everything is tidy and secure, that all the lines have a fair lead, there's no line chafe or loose lines on deck. You can see a couple of lines rigged to the pole. The topping lift is rigged to the end of the pole and runs up to a block on the mast. That line raises the end of the pole. It's not tight enough, so the pole has dropped down a bit from the clew of the sail, and I'm going to tension it now. There are 2 other lines coming aft. One is the jib sheet. It's tied to the clew of the jib and runs aft through the jaws of the pole into a winch near the cockpit. The other line is called the after guy. It's tied to a pole and the line runs aft to a cleat. The other line running from the end of the pole to the foredeck is called the foreguy. It keeps the end of the pole down and also keeps it from swinging aft. If for some reason I had to quickly drop the jib, I don't want the whisker pole swinging around in an uncontrolled manner and banging into the cap shroud or the headstay. These are the kinds of things you need to do to keep everything under control and avoid doing any damage or causing any unnecessary drama. Here's some downwind sailing with the pole out. A little while to get it rigged. I haven't done it in a while. Makes a big difference on the boat steering a straight line. The wind's getting a little light now. I just adjusted the wind vane, that's why it's swinging around so much. Pretty wild swing right there. You sail along the coast like this, the wind's not always as steady as it is out in the ocean. There's lots of little shifts and stuff. The wind vane responds to every shift. There you go. This is where a second camera would be really handy. A chest-mounted GoPro or something so you could see what I'm doing on the foredeck. I got the pole down and the boat configured for upwind sailing. We had to clear the southwest corner of Water Island, between that and Porpoise Rock, and then start working our way northeast up the West Gregory Channel. And though the trade winds are generally east-northeast, once you start working up the channel, they'll start coming down the West Gregory Channel from the northeast, and you'll have to beat back up the channel towards the mooring. Sailing in channels or bays with high ground on both sides will pretty much guarantee you big wind shifts and variable wind strength from significant gusts to zephyrs with little notification. The higher the mountains, the stronger the gusts. You have to watch the water for indications of what's about to happen. That's Honeymoon Bay to the right, where a lot of boats are anchored. There's a number of moorings further back up into the bay. Very popular place off of Water Island. So I'm just trying to work the boat to the east side of the West Gregory Channel. And you'll see why in a little bit, because I'll have to start tacking. So I'm just cutting along the stern of the boat and watching the wind, keeping a close eye out for the wind shifts, which can be quite dramatic in here. It's important to keep your boat under control at all times. Everything takes longer when you're sailing single-handed, especially in gusty conditions and with limited maneuver room. It's a fine line between being under and overpowered. I'm not in a hurry. I want to have enough momentum to maintain positive control. But as long as the boat's moving through the water, I can steer and can maintain directional control over the far reach. That's St. Thomas and Crum Bay to the left and Water Island to the right, with the West Gregory Channel running right between them. We're sailing right up the channel. In these kind of variable conditions, I want to make sure I don't overtrim the sails. I'll sail the boat a little free, meaning I'm footing off and not sailing too close to the wind. I want to keep the boat moving and as powered up as I can. She's heavy, she has a full keel, she's not a race boat. I want to maintain momentum and use it to our advantage when the wind gets light. Like anyone, I want to get to where I'm going as soon as I can. but I want to make sure I'm maintaining control at all times. I primarily trim the main by using the telltales on the leech. I like to keep them streaming aft most of the time and occasionally flicking around the leeward side. I always use the telltales on the jib luff to ensure I have it trimmed properly and to avoid pinching. I also use them to make sure I have the jib lead set correctly so all the telltales break evenly along the entire luff of the jib. This is a good example of why I really like tiller steered boats. When they're set up right, all your controls are right there. You're not moving from behind the wheel, forward to the winch, and then back to the steering wheel. I can straddle the tiller. I've got the main sheet right in front of me, and all the winches, both for the jib and the staysail if I was flying a staysail, all of those control lines are right there. That's a huge wind shift. I'm going to go ahead and take it and tack the boat back.
Some funky wind.
I don't have any wind instruments. There's no masthead fly or yarn streamers. I'm simply using my own senses, the wind on my face or on the back of my neck. I'm looking at the surface of the water. I've sailed pretty much this way my whole life. If you're not careful, instruments can distract you and then dull your own senses as you stop paying attention to them. You start focusing on things inside the boat instead of focusing your attention outside the boat. There's a nice gust of wind. A good example of why you don't want to be overpowered when picking up a mooring under sail, single-handed in a crowded anchorage. The tiller tells me everything I need to know about sail trim. If the tiller falls away a little bit to leeward, then I know I can trim in on the main a little more. If I have to pull the helm a little bit to windward to keep the boat moving straight, then I know I need to ease the main off a little bit. It's all about sail trim and helm balance. You can see I'm really focused outside the boat. This is a good example of why I choose not to have a full dodger, a bimini, or anything that gets in my way and restricts my ability to see. I'm not interested in instruments or chart plotters. They're not helpful in conditions like this. I want to be able to see outside the boat with my own eyes and without distraction. I'm looking at the sails, for boat traffic, navigation aids, wind shifts, anything that increases my situational awareness and might influence my decision making for the handling of the boat. Having a wide open cockpit and unrestricted visibility improves your confidence because you have increased situational awareness. The most important factor in developing these skills is simply practice. I like being able to stand up on the cockpit lockers as it improves my ability to see well forward and scan the surface of the water for impending gusts or wind shifts. Wind instruments only tell you what's happening right now, but I want to know what's coming. You need to use your eyeballs for that. My mooring is off the bow at about 2 o'clock. Here's a good example of why you really have to be on your game sailing into an anchorage. Notice the wind shift and the cat that looms off to leeward. I have to assess very quickly if I need to tack to stay clear of the cat, or can I sail on past. And if I need to tack, I have to have a clear deck and total access to the tiller, the jib, and the main sheets. Right there to the left, off the port bow, is our faded yellow mooring ball. I plan to sail on past to make sure it's in good order before I commit to picking it up. I'm also gauging the conditions at the mooring to include the current, as we have a reversing tide current in Elephant Bay. I want to make sure I also have a good line I can sail all the way to the mooring ball.
Hey, John!
Hey! How you guys doing? That's our pendant, float, and mooring ball that just went by on the right. I'll sail the boat upwind to the mooring and tack when I have room. I'll drop the jib when she's head to wind, so the jib will fall right into the center of the deck and I can secure it quickly and easily. I set the wind vane to keep the boat on course and go forward to the mast. Once there, I uncoil the jib halyard and toss it aft to quickly flake it out so it will run free with minimal risk of tangling. I could also run the boat dead downwind and drop the jib behind the main, but I'd want to rig the preventer to control the boom, and doing so would give me less options than staying upwind of the mooring. I didn't want my maneuvering ability restricted in a channel with active boat traffic, plus I wanted to stay upwind of the mooring ball when I dropped the jib. The far reach doesn't point well without a jib, and she tacks much slower without the drive of a headsail. In short, I want to keep my options open as I approach the mooring. Right there, I engaged the wind vane, then pulled on the course correcting line that runs along the top of the starboard coaming to make the wind vane tack the boat. Then I go forward to drop the jib when the boat's head to wind. Note the tiller has shifted to port. The far reach will tack on her own, allowing me to drop the jib, and at the same time she'll sail away from danger by herself because I planned ahead. I went back to the cockpit and disengaged the wind vane and let the mainsail out for a new course, so I'd have time to coil the jib downhaul and secure the jib and get everything ready for picking up the mooring. This will be a leeward mooring pickup, so I double check to make sure the long 40-foot snubber is rigged and clear to run free. The bitter end of the snubber is secured to a cleat on the foredeck and run through the hawse hole in the bulwark. I flake the line on deck and secure the running end to the lifeline with a quick release half edge. Once I grab the mooring pendant with the boat hook, the long snubber gives me time to get it through the eye in the mooring pendant. Remember, the boat's still moving. I can't let the boat come to a complete stop in a mooring field because if I foul up the pickup, I won't have directional control over the far reach. I'll bring the running end back on board and secure it to the bow cleat. At that point, the boat is on the mooring. She can't get away. It's important to note that with two people, this whole thing is easier by an order of magnitude. But it's still completely doable single-handed if you plan it out, take your time, and make good decisions. Notice how easily the full keel, 16,000 pound far reach tacks without a jib even in a light breeze. This is a good demonstration of the advantages of flush mounting the through hulls, building a taller rig, but mostly eliminating the drag-inducing propeller aperture and fixed blade prop with an offset two-blade folding propeller. Some viewers might think I could have reached across on port tack closer to the mooring, then tacked on to starboard and coasted up to the mooring. The problem with this is I would have needed to tack without the drive of a jib right off the stern of Maranantha, the CT-54 you see at 2 o'clock. But if anything went wrong, the wind suddenly died or shifted direction dramatically, and we missed stays, then I could have collided with her. Those are the kinds of risks I don't take with other boats nearby. Think your way through the maneuvers and make sure you don't put other people's boats at risk. This, of course, applies if you're sailing without an engine or you're under power. Note that I'm looking aft to set the air blade on the wind vane. I engage the vane to keep the far reach on course and throw some slack into the main sheet to reduce forward drive just before I move forward, to get into position to grab the mooring pendant with a boat hook. There's the mooring ball, right there. I've already picked up the pendant and run the snubber through the eye. All I have to do is get the running end back through the hawse hole and onto the cleat. You can't stop a 16,000 pound boat by hand with way on her. You have to get the line onto the cleat or else you're going to have to go around and do it again. Note how if I'd boogered up the pickup, it was simple enough to walk aft, sheet in on the main, pick up some speed, and go around again. Nothing to it. I drop the main into the lazy jacks, and at this point we're mission complete. I'll flake the main down and get the boom back into the gallows by lowering the boom topping lift. I'll tidy up the boat, get the sail covers on the main and jib, and rig up the sun awning. As the boat settles into position, I'll shorten the snubber, and we're set. If you enjoyed this episode of Far Reach Voyages, let us know in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing, as it tells us you would like to see more videos and it helps the channel grow. See you in the next episode.